Well, you know, let's face it, I'm all about the love-hate relationship with technology. I mean, I love it. I love the engineering stuff. I love the deep ocean exploration, building robotics. But at the same time, I also have the hate side of the relationship, which is really more of a fear of the consequences of our own love affair with technology. Most of the scientists I know were science fiction fans when they were kids. You have to inspire the imagination first before somebody can be inspired to dedicate their entire life to figuring out the big mystery of the natural world.
When the scientists go to actually build something, you know, the things that they have in their head are the ideas they got from reading books and seeing movies. I absolutely remember the Terminator. It certainly had an impact on me wanting to do robots.
I think just great science fiction is very forward-looking about what's going to happen in the future. And what's so amazing about the Terminator series is every year it becomes more and more true. We are just automating warfare increasingly. We're using robots in ways that we never had.
What science fiction really does is it holds a mirror up to the present state. So where are we right now in our present state? Why is the Terminator still relevant now, 21 years later? Because we're in this interesting transition from non-technological to technological organisms.
The Terminator was revolutionary, and I think it really put an idea into people's heads about how robots could be used for evil. But I think it's probably, we have to realize that there's a lot of ways robots can be used as tools, and that these kind of evil robots that we've seen in the movies are a long way off. We built a robot here at MIT that learns to walk, and I think that's important because as the robots leave the laboratory and start experiencing terrain that they haven't seen before, it's important that they can adapt their gait online. And that's something that we haven't captured in robots yet. We haven't given them the ability to learn with experience. And so we tried to build that in a very simple robot. We called him Toddler. Treadmill's got a little slope to it, and he's just falling down the ramp. He waddles around. He doesn't have knees or anything like that, but he does learn to walk. And what we mean by learning to walk is that when he starts, he doesn't know anything about walking. And every step that he takes, every time he lifts his feet up, he tries pushing off with his ankles with a slightly different strategy. And then every step he does that, he evaluates how well the strategy worked using his sensors and makes an insight about walking. And after many steps, he makes many small gradual improvements to the point where he's walking stably down the hall. There's a stereotype that robots will walk in this very mechanical, slow, stiff way, which is actually how they walk now. But I think when we really understand walking, then probably the robots are going to walk with a more fluid, you're going to see their legs swinging through more like a human. And the reason for that is because when you walk more fluidly like that, you actually save a lot more energy, and your battery packs are going to go a lot farther. It's surprising. I mean, walking comes really easy to us. And a lot of people would assume that it's easy for robots, but it's one of the major unsolved problems in robotics right now.
The rosy human future is us in partnership with our machines doing interesting things. For example, space exploration. You get out much beyond low Earth orbit, and you've got this little thing called the speed of light that limits your ability to have direct real-time control of a robot, say on the surface of Mars. As the tasks that these vehicles have to perform get more and more complex and require more real-time control, like don't drive off a cliff, these machines are going to have to get smarter and smarter. So there's an actual driver for AI applications. If you look at NASA with the rovers up on Mars, as sophisticated as those machines are, they can't do very much. Every single thing they do is programmed by an operator in advance, and they move a couple of meters a day. They have some onboard object avoidance, they have some onboard navigation, but that all has to increase by orders of magnitude.
Even there are other application areas like cleaning hazardous waste dumps and nuclear power plants. Places where humans don't want to go are good places to send a robot. Rescue missions in collapsed buildings. Another big trend right now is robotic-assisted surgery. They're great tools that we should be using a lot.
Well, what's fascinating is how much of what happened in the first Terminator has really come to be. Killer robots in the field are now what thing they're debating in the Pentagon and actually actively developing.
There are robotic killer soldiers, and the question, well, can we let a soldier go out there and kill a person on its own decision, is a question I ran across in a New York Times article about the next generation of robotic soldiers. And it's kind of interesting how much all the things that seemed absurd in 1984 as possibilities are actually coming to pass.
It's interesting to see them basically heading toward the hunter-killers. You've already got the flying hunter-killers. You've got, Global Hawk and Predator, autonomous vehicles. They'll have, unmanned bombers pretty soon.
I understand from people in the military that the aerial drones that they used to use just for surveillance, now they use actually for attacking, they have artificial intelligence programs in them where they basically are programmed to look for certain identifying things, whether it's a certain kind of vehicle or even a certain kind of license plate. And they can just go ahead and essentially take out these targets on their own. Right now, we currently have safeguards built in where the drone has to essentially radio back for authorization to carry out its mission. But basically, it's like a yes-no switch back at the Pentagon. That's right out of Terminator.
I think you can see how unacceptable it is for us to have human losses in a war now. We have to fight these video game wars. We have to have our machines do it for us. So we're going to be moving in that direction more and more, and it won't be long before we have a bipedal gun platform of some kind that starts to look remarkably like a maybe not the T-800, with the skin over them, but something like an earlier version of that.
Basically, our goal is to create a commercial, industrial, and ultimately a militarily viable bipedal type machine that is capable of being very modular, very extensible, fitting into many, many facets, and the biggest advantage would be terrain navigation. A vehicle that has two legs is capable of getting in areas that a normal wheeled or tracked vehicle can't. A vehicle of this type is capable of taking on many, many roles, militarily speaking. It would be, lightweight, lightly armored with limited standoff capabilities type of basically super infantry.
We don't see it as a thing to be intimidated by. More or less, it's another machine, another tool.
The machine type that we are developing is completely human-controlled. You have a pilot inside that does all the operations and maintenance of the machine. The artificial intelligence that exists is simply there to facilitate what the human being is attempting to do, or do it as well as the human being can, but repeatedly, so there's no, stress or failure for highly repetitive tasks.
We're still a ways away from being able to duplicate the human brain. I mean, that little 3-pound, meat computer is still the most advanced, consciousness engine on the planet.
It was the machines, defense network computers, hooked into everything, trusted to run it all. They say it got smart. A new order of intelligence.
So one of the major questions is whether we'll ever achieve artificial intelligence. And no one knows, and we're a long way from it right now. But if you were to build a perfect silicon replica of a neuron in every way, it does all the electrical properties, all the chemical properties, and if you were to replace a neuron into someone's brain, then probably that person is going to still act and think and exist like a human. I don't see a real scientific reason why we couldn't replicate things in every possible way. But we're a long way from it right now.
The Terminator's an infiltration unit. Part man, part machine. Underneath, it's a hyperalloy combat chassis. Microprocessor controlled.
I think what's interesting is more the kind of the global consciousness that's possible as a result of the internet, and the way that we kind of merge with our machines into this cyborg neural system, if you will, that will be on a planetary scale. That's what I see happening first, as opposed to the big consciousness engine in a box someplace in a vault at an AI lab. That will happen as well, eventually. We exist in this tight relationship with our machines. As time goes forward, we will start to bring more of the technology inside ourselves, and we will mentally begin to align ourselves with the use of technology through computers, because we spend more and more time each day in an interface with the internet and with machine applications, software and so on, to solve our problems. So our consciousness is now being extended out into the world in a physical form, and that physical world is being brought into our bodies, and so the line is just going to get blurrier and blurrier as we go along. That's why I have no problem imagining that maybe 50 years from now, somebody who's in a Christopher Reeve type situation, who's a quadriplegic, might elect to have his brain explanted into a cyborg body to go do some very interesting thing with the rest of their life.
¡Viene una tormenta!
What did he just say?
He said there's a storm coming in.
I know.
Well, I think, the Terminator always gets kind of hauled up every time, we have something to be fearful about with respect to robotic technology and military robotics and things like that. And it will continue to be, a cautionary tale in that regard. An over-reliance on technology can lull you into a sense of safety, which is an illusion. But We have to think our way out of this through technological solutions. You know, the solutions to global warming and, you know, rapid climate change that we're going to be experiencing this century are going to be technological solutions. They'll be high technology solutions. Things like that are how we're going to think our way out of this. But if that infrastructure was interrupted, even for a few days, we'd be in deep yogurt. There's no question about it. And that's going to be true indefinitely, because there's no turning back. There's no going back to the natural state. You know, there never was a Garden of Eden. It was a hard scrabble, you know, vicious world, and we're actually living better now than we ever have in human history. But there's no going back to that natural state. We're in the game, and we're going to play the game with this.